Dan Bunting, Head of Business Development at the Advanced Propulsion Centre, and I'll spend a bit of time talking about our funding, but also some of the other activities that we are involved in. So for the time being, we've got a challenge. The government's laid out plans for 2050 with some key milestones to hit between now and then. And obviously that presents both challenges and opportunities. So what we have is a strong automotive supply chain, but we've got a number of emerging technologies, and that's a journey that we've been on towards electrification. And that's why the funding is so important and the landscape is quite active at the moment. So the Advanced Propulsion Centre, you may or may not have heard of us. We've been around since 2013, and we've been playing a key role working between industry, government and academia to make sure that we're developing new products and establishing supply chains of the future. So I'll come on to the funding, but I think some of the other areas that you may not be as familiar with, we've been involved in the roadmaps, we've been involved in issuing various collaborative reports that help set the landscape out and help people make investment decisions. We are quite active in the way that Sarah's just described about building consortia. So it's not just about offering the funding, it's about building consortia and making sure that we maximize the opportunities for a whole range of organizations. Some have been in automotive for many years, some are very new to the sector, and also we work cross sector as well. We help manage those projects. Some of the projects are very complex, several moving parts, many of them are above 5 or 6 different companies. So we help manage those projects, and they're all delivering, they're part of a UK national platform, and they're delivering obviously reductions in emissions, and they're delivering new technologies, but they are also creating and safeguarding jobs and building supply chains of the future. So that's what we've been up to since 2013. Just to try and put that into numbers, what that's resulted in is well over 100 projects, and they're all pretty much collaborative. So you can see the project partners there is approaching 300. Massive reduction in CO2 across the various platforms, and 40,000 plus jobs created or safeguarded. And that includes, in many cases, people developing new skills, moving from mechanical, electromechanical into the new sectors. So one example I would give here that's perhaps relevant is we work with a company based just outside Edinburgh, a company called Artemis Power, who are working on a new technology to reduce emissions from off-highway vehicles. And that in some ways led to further investment from a larger organization called Danfoss, and that business is going from strength to strength. So that's an indication of what these projects can lead to, as well as delivering key technology. So I'll try not to steal anybody else's thunder, but I thought it was important really to display what I see, or what we see as the funding landscape. So historically, the UK has done very well in early research, some world-class universities, and Innovate UK across a range of sectors has covered a number of different funding opportunities. So what the APC, when it came about in 2013, did was it added to that portfolio. So we call it late stage R&D or industrialization. So this is taking technologies that have been developed to an early stage, perhaps have a proof of concept or a prototype available, but it takes you through those later developments in terms of technology readiness levels and manufacturing readiness levels. And that's what the APC CR&D projects have been doing for a number of years. The new element that we added last year was the Automotive Transformation Fund, and I'll explain that in a bit more detail. So we work very closely with a number of partners. At the bottom of the chart, you can see the Faraday Battery Challenge, Driving the Electric Revolution, and Made Smarter. They're all cross-sector funding opportunities that are complementary and additional to the activities of the APC. So in terms of what that means, just trying to click my screen. Okay, so the core competitions. So this is the R&D pot. We run competitions 2 or 3 every year, and typically they're between 5 and 40 million pounds, and they cover all sectors of the automotive landscape. So we're not just talking about passenger cars here, we're talking about motorbikes, passenger cars, truck, bus, and off-highway. And one of the ambitions of the project is to deliver the R&D benefits, but then to create and safeguard the jobs and reduce the CO2 emissions. Now, I've been asked particularly to mention APC 18, and that's very pertinent because that has really just, we've done a briefing event this morning, and that competition has gone live now. You can get a link from our website, apcuk.co.uk, or you can go into Innovate, or you can go straight to the government website. It's a stage where you get assessment done technically and value for money from BEIS, from the economists that work for central government. And that's got a closing date of the 5th of May, but you can get in touch with us anytime to discuss your ideas and your application. But just to get into the detail of it, I think, to make it more simple for people, we're talking about building long-term capability in the supply chain in the UK. So it's broadly an R&D program, but what we're looking for is to understand the long-term benefits, and that's when you're reaching ambitions in terms of volume production. The scope in terms of technology hasn't really changed since 2013. We cover electric machines and power electronics, so we're talking motors and drives there, includes inverters, converters, and other areas of the system. We're talking energy storage and energy management. That can cover the battery, but also any other elements of energy storage. Lightweight vehicle and powertrain structures. We have a number of projects in steel, aluminium, composite material, and thermal propulsion. So we're still looking, if we can, to support the development and the transition of traditional engines. They would have to be making significant improvements in terms of emissions, but they're still included in the scope. We're looking for supply chain, and they have to be automotive focused. So the first application has to be on one of those examples I gave previously, but spill over into other sectors such as marine or rail or aerospace is a benefit. And then the projects have to be business led. So we can involve academia and research organizations, but they must be led by industry. A little bit more information. We do need there to be evidence of an OEM or a tier one. The reason for that is there must be a route to market. So it has to be clearly transferable from R&D into the marketplace. Now that can be an aspiring OEM or an aspiring tier one. So don't look at it and say, well, that means we can't join in. We have had organizations, SMEs who've led projects, been very successful. It's a challenge because you have to commit evidence and maybe have a steering committee that shows how you can deliver the project, but it's an important part of the landscape. Every project needs an SME. Quite often we have more than one SME and they need their own role in the project. They're not just a token SME, they've got their own exploitation plans and benefits. Duration, 18 to 42 months. That's the complexity of the projects. I've mentioned the 5 to 40 million. And it's a maximum of 50%. So different organizations are eligible and can have larger grants. So small and micros up to 70%, universities up to 100, but there's still a 50% cap on the project. I've talked about route to market. Now I'm going to talk about a few more elements. I'm moving slightly away from the agenda that I've been given, but I think it's important to share this. The Automotive Transformation Fund was added in June of last year, and this is to anchor the supply chain. So it's less R&D focused and more focused on the large capital investments that are needed to deploy the range of technologies that we've been talking about. So it supports the UK's green recovery and obviously post COVID-19. Then we have the Technology Developer Accelerator program. So right now, if you go to our website, we're open until the middle of April for expressions of interest. So this is for smaller organizations, perhaps not ready for APC projects and the scale of them, but they've got some great ideas and they need mentoring and support. So there's an element of funding involved, but there's an awful lot of help and support with marketing, project management, technology development, patent and IP. So if you're a smaller company and you want a shorter term accelerator program, then that's open and available on our website right now. I mentioned the roadmaps at the beginning. They've been absolutely critical. So we've been asked by the Auto Council, which is obviously representing industry and government, to help refresh and pull together a whole set of roadmaps. They're also on our website. They are free to download. I've seen them be used in pitches to some quite senior board members of various large organizations, because they paint a picture of what is happening. It's okay having ideas, and if you're going for investment, you know, you're looking for support, but to be able to go back to the consensus of a roadmap that's been pulled together by nearly 200 organizations globally means, you know, you're building your ideas onto solid foundation. So please download them, please feel free to use them. They're available on our website. What they do is they break things down. They break products down into those three areas on the left. I've talked about light duty. There's one for heavy goods and off highway, and there's a separate one for bus and coach. But probably the detail, which many of you will be into, is on the technology roadmaps themselves. So we've refreshed roadmaps that look at electrical energy storage, lightweighting, power electronics we've mentioned, electric machines and motors and drives, and engines themselves. But last year we added the fuel cell roadmap. Fuel cells are an important part of the ecosystem, and a fuel cell vehicle is a fuel cell electric vehicle. So many of these technologies are in fact complementary. Just highlighting another bit of work that was done. We created and have issued, and again available on the website, the passenger car report. So what we did here is we worked across industry to understand what the roadmap towards electrification means for the UK, and we've identified £24 billion worth of opportunities which are drilled down to in this report. Feel free to download it, feel free to review it. Any questions and comments obviously come back to us. And that really formed actually part of the business case for the Automotive Transformation Fund, because the supply chains of the future are going to be very high value, but there's a significant transition required. And then my final slide actually is the advertising the Transport Energy Network report. So a little bit further afield, the APC does work cross-sector. We don't provide cross-sector funding per se, but we're aware of it, and we understand where the roadmaps and the technologies can be used across a whole broad range of transportation. So again, another one to download and read. So that really brings me to the end. Thank you for Dan and Sarah for inviting me. I've tried to be as brief as I could, but share as much information as I can in the time. You can get in touch with us. I've got a team of people and myself. So info@apcuk.co.uk is the best way to get picked up very quickly. And we will handle all inquiries. A lot of what we do is signpost into partner organisations. You'll hear about that in the next presentation. But that really brings me to a close.